So do I need to turn it on? Is it on? For those of you who are used to the 9:15 forum starting at 9:20, since we kind of make our way gradually in here, we are actually going to start here in just a minute or so, especially for the choir, because the choir's rearranged their schedule this morning so they can catch as much of this as they can before they go over and warm up. So here in another minute or so, we're going to roll into this. So come on in. Plenty of room down front. All right, Robin, I think we can go. We're going live. Good morning. Good to be with you all. Those of you who are here in the room and those of you who are out there in the interweb land joining us via live stream. This is a really exciting morning for us here at Calvary. It's so exciting, as I said, we're actually going to start Sunday school at 9:15. That's how exciting it is. Where our choir has rearranged their morning, which we're really grateful for, so they can get in for a good chunk of this presentation. So let's open with a prayer. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Almighty and eternal God, so draw our hearts to you, so guide our minds, so fill our imaginations, so control our wills, that we may be wholly yours, utterly dedicated unto you. And then use us, we pray, as you will, and always to your glory and the welfare of your people, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. So our project today is to have these two women on the front row from Vandersall Collective take us through our feasibility study findings. What they've asked me to do quickly as we kick off is do a quick run through how we got here. And I'm going to do this as quickly as I can, because you might know it's been a bit of a meandering path once it got interrupted with a, global pandemic for a couple of years. But the process goes back to actually 2008 and 2016. Those of you who are here then know that Calvary had capital campaigns proposed and for different reasons decided it wasn't right to go forward. What we've said several times is those are not failed campaigns. That's successful discernment of what's right at a particular moment in the life of the congregation. It wasn't right to go forward. In January of 29, I'm going to hit some high points. Our vestry had a retreat in the orgel room. Who can point to the orgel room from here? Pretty good. That's pretty good. So on the other side of this wall is the orgel room. It's a playroom for the day school, the daycare right now, childcare right now, and it's two floors, has an atrium. So we sat down there and thought that would be a different kind of space to sit and think about first. Who are we as Calvary? What are our core values and missional kind of identity? And then the afternoon, we took a tour of all of the vestry who should know Calvary. But after we had all this in mind, we walked through all of our buildings, and we took a tour so that we could think about how they work and how they serve, what they might need in the years to come to work better. That summer, we started pulling together a master plan exploration committee, and that group started interviewing the staff and key ministry leaders, and then pulled together something called an ideas group of more than 30 folks at Calvary that were best as we could do. Who are we missing? It's just a group of who is not at the table here. So different people involved in specific ministries, people who sing, people who teach children. We had people on that group from age 17 to into their 80s. So just tried to make a cross-section of who Calvary is so that as we start gathering perspectives on what our buildings might need to look like in our block in the years to come, we would capture that. In the fall and the winter of 2019, we met with some capital campaign consultants. That's when we chose Vandersall Collective, whom you'll meet in just a moment. Our master plan committee actually had a meeting with Todd Richardson at Crosstown Arts early on, and we said, Todd, could you tell us something about the process by which Crosstown revitalized itself, and what were the elements that were involved? There was a fantastic, fascinating conversation that we then later folded into conversations with our vestry. Learned about something called urban magnets theory that has to do with the way different activities can feed off the energy if they can see each other and engage with each other, whether it's in a city block or inside a building. Well, the next January, this is January 2020. There should be some kind of music, ominous music starting in the background. In January 2020, the vestry had our retreat at Crosstown, and we explored with these urban magnets. What would that mean for our block? What might it look like if we had these things in mind? And Kat Gordon led that retreat from Muddy's. Some of you know Kat, brilliant, wonderful retreat leader. And after lunch, she came back and she said, okay, you have all these great ideas. Now what if something terrible happens and you have to blow it all up? January 2020. So we declared her a prophet. Yeah. We asked her what to invest in the stock market, and that's why we can do this camp. No. So that really was a thought experiment. It seemed like just a thought experiment at the time, but as you know, a couple of months later, it happened. And everything kind of ground to a halt, and our lives weren't like we thought they were. Well, it was a rich year for the vestry because they had this practice of saying, we blue-skied everything, but we identified some values. What could we do now? So they did some things like working on the park out here because we needed outside space for outreach and gathering and a lot of little ways of living into these things within our means. That January, at the end of January, we had an annual meeting, and David Lusk stood up and talked to us about this master plan process up to that point. So then we had 2 years where we had a year where we just paused. We took everything that we'd learned, which was quite a lot, had hired some architects, said, go ahead and finish it, don't finish the project, but take that information and at least fold it in and capture it, and then we put it in the freezer for a year. Returned to it last summer. Well, that original project, I'll say, is where that $15 million number that I hope knocked you out of your chair when you got your materials like it did me when we got an estimate the first time. It came from that initial blue sky conceptual drawings. Ever since that time, we had started the wheels turning. How could we simplify this project, bring costs down in ways that are still true to our mission? But we kept that number because it's the best number we had, and we knew it was very, very conservative at the time, just for the purpose of this feasibility study. Then in winter and spring of 2022, just this past January, Mieke and Erin joined our vestry for a Zoom where we again returned and said, what does it look like to bring this to fruition? And started the feasibility study that I hope most of you, if not all of you, participated in this spring. So Mieke and Erin, Vandersall Collective, two remarkable folks that we're glad to have been working on this. This is my first feasibility study as this is. So I learned what that is and how much texture and how much information way besides money is involved if the people doing the study know church, care about what it means to be faithful, care about what it means to express your values in everything that you do. And Mieke and Erin really, really get that. So I'm going to get out of the way. I just wanted to take you on a quick run through how we got here and then let them tell you what they've learned, what they heard from you from this feasibility study. Welcome. So glad you're here.
Wow, there's a lot more people here than when I.
That's the real reason.
It happened. Wow, that's fantastic. It's wonderful to meet all of you. My name is Mieke, and I'm the principal consultant at Vandersall Collective. And Erin and I are just getting used to traveling again, and it's just thrilling to see people and to see you all. Some of you whom we interviewed over the last months as we got to know this really, really beautiful faith community. We're glad to be with you, and we're glad to be presenting an extraordinarily positive feasibility study. you all are ready to go. And it's just a real gift to give such good news to a community that's been waiting for so long. Erin, do you want to say something before I start going through, or do you want to say hi once you start going through?
Oh, I can say hi now.
Say hi.
It would be my pleasure to. Hello, Calvary. My name is Erin Weber-Johnson, and Mieke and I both are delighted to come to you to report, as we said, on a strikingly positive feasibility study report. And we're also looking forward to joining you all for worship. Mieke and I, as Scott indicated, we believe in rooting our work both in the values that we share with you all, but we also have a particular lens of faith that we introduce to this work. We believe that any capital campaign is more than a dollar amount. We very much see that there's a purpose and a why that you all hold dear, why Calvary exists, why you all love it here, why God is calling you to this new extraordinary vision. And so we're very delighted to join you. We're also very much excited to dig a little deeper in just a moment into making that vision feasible. All right.
How did she tell you to? Uh-oh. Robin? Oh, good.
There you go.
We got it. Great. So I'm going to begin by talking briefly about what a feasibility study is, what we're measuring. As Scott said, it's much more than the dollar amount that we're looking for. We are concerned about the level of awareness of the proposed plans. So the plan that you all received, the little brochure, we were asking you all how aware you are of the changes that might take place, that are proposed to take place, and that correlates to the level of excitement and the dollar amount that we believe can be raised. The level of support for moving forward, which at Calvary for this particular campaign was extraordinarily, you just shot it out of the water. The level of support for moving forward, which Erin will talk about the numbers in a minute, were profoundly high. You don't want to engage in a campaign if there's not support. It's really that simple. So the level of engagement by the congregation with the projects and the perception of priority. So in this particular bullet point here, we wanted to see how much you all are claiming this as your own, how you have engaged in getting to this point in particular, and how you might prioritize then the projects which we had you all prioritize, and it was very hard for some people to do so because many people thought everything was a priority, right? But we had to somehow parse this apart so that we knew then how to move forward in prioritization if the dollar amount could not be reached, and if some parts of these projects just weren't seen as priority. And then, of course, the realistic and feasible goals. Capital campaign shows the possibility of reaching financial goals as well as volunteer goals. How many people are going to be interested? And this is not a campaign cannot be done with a few people. It requires the whole community. So that's another one of the goals that we're looking at as well. So what we did. Oh. Ha. Thanks. Yeah, Emma? Yeah. First, so there are really three steps of a feasibility study. First, we looked at all of the documents that have been put together for you all to see, to read about you all. The good news is that we were engaged in a listening process before the pandemic. That was also one of the big happened at the pandemic. So we had already gotten to know you all a little bit during that time, so we refreshed ourselves with who you are and who you have been since the pandemic has happened. And then we interviewed a few people and we created the case statement, the proposed, the feasibility case statement to reflect back to the community what was possible. Then we interviewed 36 people. households, and we also heard from a very high percentage, 55% of the people that we sent the feasibility study out to, and we collected all of that data. Then Erin and I went in our hole and we ran numbers, and I looked at words and themes, and then we created this almost 100-page document that we presented to the vestry. So, and that document has the analysis and recommendations, which we'll be bringing you through here today. Erin.
Sure. Oh, thank you. So what we like to do is we like to reflect the success measures of a capital campaign by testing out these same success measures in the feasibility study. And so when we think about what are the ways in which we want to measure the success of a capital campaign, yes, we absolutely want you to reach your capital campaign goal. We also want you all to feel like you did it together, that maybe rather than one or two people funding this, that this was something that everybody was excited about. We want this to be something where volunteers from all different parts of the church come alongside. We want this to be something that does not take away from your annual giving, right, that funds the mission and the ministry of your church, but rather supports it and allows it to increase. And so in order to do that, we measured, and you all that filled out a survey saw that we asked lots of different types of questions, both quantitative, so the hard numbers that we're going to be talking about, the statistics, as well as the qualitative, right? In order to look for themes, for language, for cultural cues that would help us in moving forward, as well as helping you all in your annual giving efforts. What makes a feasibility study a success? Well, what makes it successful is how we implement it. What made it successful is that you had, we use the word effective, but I feel like that's kind of underselling your leadership a little bit. You have extremely qualified, effective, trusted leadership that were guiding this process. I can tell you from experience that that is vital for a feasibility study to be successful, because oh my goodness, I have seen it not be successful. You have a clear strategy for recruiting people. What I mean by that is this. We can tell early on if we're going to have problems, if we have problems in getting people just to fill out the surveys. You had a plan for recruiting people, and you knew so much about the culture as to, okay, this will work and this will not. We didn't just send out surveys online because we knew that there was a combination of people that needed surveys sent in different ways. That's important information. We knew that this was successful because of the level of responses. 55% of participants filled this out. This requires a little bit of clarification. So the nonprofit standard for feasibility studies for response rates is abysmally low. It's 17%. Mieke and I think that's ridiculous. Like, it's absolutely ridiculously low, right? And that's something that for those of you that are in nonprofits, I want to say, if you're working with other consulting firms, ask them what that rate is for them. We, at our firm, we hold to a standard of at least 32%. We believe we have to at least hear from 32% to get a sense of what is the actual will of the congregation. So to hear from 55% is an extremely large number. We tend to see somewhere around 35 to 45% typically. You all have a lot to be proud of already. Finally, due to some wonderful work from the Feasibility Study Committee, we had a narrative that we were able to incorporate into the case thanks to Robin and several others who helped us with photos. We were able to create clear plans and engaging materials. So enough about what we did and why y'all are successful. You probably want to know the results, don't you? Right. Okay. So the first result is this. It's time for a campaign. Thank you. This is extraordinary, and I don't know that I've ever seen numbers quite this clear. When asked, are you in favor of a capital campaign, you all had three choices, right? You had yes, yes, but I have some thoughts to share, or no. 98% said that they were in favor of moving forward with a capital campaign. Of that number, 16% said, yes, but I have some thoughts to share. You know what those thoughts were? Let's get on with it. Typically, that's where we hear, but I'm really concerned about X, Y, and Z, right? That was not the thoughts that we were expecting. Instead, what we heard was, yes, but we want the campaign to be successful and it needs to be as soon as possible. This is a very striking number. Next, another factor that we always look for successful capital campaigns is a willingness to give. This helps us understand what is the level of engagement for the projects, but this is always a very complicated question because we recognize that we're asking, are you willing to give to this without the projects actually being finalized yet? It's complicated. And yet, an unusually strong number of respondents, again, 89%, said that they would be willing to give. Typically, we would like to see that number right around 55 to 65%. And you knocked it out of the water again, 89%. And I need to note, 7% not being sure is not a negative either. It means quite often we see that being a much larger percentage. Of that 7%, that typically means people are waiting to see what the projects are. They're waiting to see how this comes together, right? This is extraordinary. All right, then I think we move to the volunteers. Yes. Holy cow. Okay, here we go. So the volunteer percent, we asked at this early time, would you be willing to volunteer in support of a capital campaign? And if so, we named some potential areas. Now, volunteering for a capital campaign, just a short little plug. It can include inviting people to give. It could include event planning. It could include helping Robin with communications or administration. So there's a wide variety of roles. Even so, typically, I know that we're going to have a successful capital campaign if we hit 17% or above. And you hit 50%. 50% of those that responded to the survey were willing to volunteer. So this was very striking. You have a strong awareness of need. You have a strong desire to see this campaign move forward, 98%. You have an early willingness to give, that's over and above what we would look for a success measure. And you have folks that are ready, willing, able to engage as volunteers for this work. What else did we find, Mieke? So what we found was that there was strong support for a campaign. And even without the early gifts that have already been given, even without a potential gift from the endowment, there was a strong desire to give. So we tested for 15 million. We heard from you all that we could recommend a goal of 7,300,000. Now, the Association of Fundraising Professionals, for whom Mieke and I are part of, always recommends a challenge goal. A challenge goal allows people to know over and above, if you move beyond your goal, where would that money go to? It also provides people with a bit of incentive. If we stretch just a little bit further, where will we go? Well, how will that money be used? The Association of Fundraising Professionals, as I indicated, always recommends a challenge goal of no more than 11%. So no more than 11% would be $800,000. So we recommend internally a goal of $8,100,000. That is a wonderful result, especially right now. Especially as you think about the fact that this, once again, does not include any early gifts that have been received, and it does not include a potential gift from the endowment. This is wonderful news. So we found that by adjusting the goal, we believe that you have every reason to be exceptionally successful. We also found when people were asked, do you believe that you can raise $15 million? By and large, people said, we're really not sure. It seems kind of high. So you all had a general sense that this might be a little bit higher than what was possible. And so we believe that by listening to you all, that you all already had the internal wisdom around this, and that this number that was just on the board reflects your will. So, once again, we believe that by adjusting the goal to a number that fits both what can be raised internally as well as what you already have, you can be absolutely successful. Next. Mieke, how about you speak to this?
In addition to people just being ready to go, you all did give us some information around priorities and what really needs to be done urgently right now. There were 3 priorities that rose to the top, which doesn't mean that the others weren't priorities, just less so. One is the kitchen, outreach, and dining areas, and the second being the historic church in Oregon, and the third being the maze of the hallways and the walkways and being able to connect in a smarter kind of way. So as your committees will move forward, they'll take this information and they will be able to utilize that to reduce the goal from 15 million to, you'll hear a little bit more about what the goal might be, 8.1 plus the endowment plus the advanced gifts. And this gives really excellent information to the vestry and to the committees moving forward as far as your planning goes to be able to reduce the scope. So,
No, you go ahead. I'll be your clicker.
okay, what did we found? What are some qualitative themes that we found throughout our time together? One, that you all are a gifted, engaged group of people. Not only with the amount of money that you all said that you think you could raise, as well as the volunteer support, as well as Let's Go. We found that you are well connected, you have a lot of social capital, you have a lot of skills and a lot of gifts, and this is not something to take for granted. That your clergy and leadership are highly regarded. Erin spoke to this already. It's just such a gift to work with a congregation where it seems that there is trust, and not only in the clergy, but also in your vestry and those who have put these plans together so far. The next is that you all, outstanding questions or opportunities for a successful campaign. Erin, I'm going to bring this back to you.
Sure. So there were about 4 to 6 questions that came up as general themes that we saw not as concerns, but opportunities for your leadership to answer your questions. And so some of those questions include, how much space are we talking about between these pews? 1 foot, 2 foot, can you help me out here? Another question was in regards to the parking lot. The plans are calling for a change in the number of parking spots, and so how would that be addressed? The third question was one of, is the endowment going to be giving to this capital campaign? If so, what amount? Right? There were also questions about who will be joining you for the capital campaign, some questions about timing. But we believe that these are, oh, and one more, why does the organ need attention? I believe that the organ had already received some repairs. So there are some questions as to, why does the organ need repairs now? Please don't hear that as a concern. It was a curiosity rather than a detraction. In fact, all of these questions present the leadership with opportunities to meet each of you where you are, to say your questions are important, and we heard them, we collected them, and now you'll get a chance to have those questions answered. So what do we recommend? Well, we recommend adjusting your goal and going for it. There is nothing holding you back, nothing at all. You have a feasibility study that is exceptional, and all markers are there that speak to the life and the health and the faithfulness of this congregation. We ask that you think about setting a revised scope for projects. So thinking about what people prioritized as important, thinking about what were the values that were raised in the listening process, and setting a goal that is feasible, that's realistic. And learn from the study and respond to issues that were raised. Do you want to continue with the further recommendations? Okay. Thanks, Robin.
You all know already about clear communication and strong leadership. Just keep doing it. Keep doing it. And also, as you move forward into a campaign, make sure that that campaign is well-resourced and well-staffed. What we mean by this is that we recommend that professional counsel is obtained, and that might be us, and that might be someone else. We would love to continue to work further with you. It also means that you need to have someone here on site who really has their mind in this campaign. There are many, many details to organize, and without having someone here amongst you who knows you, many details can be lost, and we don't want all of this hard work to go to waste without that person there. Those are the end of our recommendations. It's really that simple, and not. So.
Thank you, Mieke and Erin. We're going to have time for some questions. I just want to say one more thing that they alluded to. So part of the process has been, this is a bit of a chicken and egg process. Those of you who have been engaged in these kind of projects in the past, we get some concepts out there. I wonder what they cost. I wonder what we can raise. So back and forth has been this. So we were already in the process of engaging design-wise. We also had talked to the endowment. I met with them last week, the endowment committee, and said they had committed in the past to say, we want to participate, we are Calvary, we want to be a lead giver, and also just think strategically with Calvary about how to use this resource faithfully, our endowment, and sustainably, but also to make available support for this project. So with the endowment support going from that, we have about $500,000 in hand, not in the endowment, from some bequests and some memorials. We have another $300 from the Meg Turner estate from a few years ago that the vestry said, we're going to park that in the endowment, but we know we want to use it for Meg in a capital campaign when it happens one day. So Meg, who I'm sorry I didn't get to know because she passed before I came, Meg was our lead gift to this. What that brings us, that 8.1 million up to 8.9 before any participation from the endowment. So with them, the endowment says we can responsibly design toward a $10 million goal. Let's get under $10 million as our reach goal. Prioritize those projects so that we know if things change in the world, and to be responsible, we need to take an off-ramp and wait another few years. We can do that, still have a plan for that, but it doesn't cut us short. We believe that we can do that. And the process that will happen, the vestry is going to meet this month and vote on whether to go forward or not. It'd be kind of rambunctious of them to say don't do it now that we have 98% of you saying we need to do it, but so I think they'll say go forward, and what an amount for our REACH goals would be. We're going to engage, continue to engage our architects with design, but we're going to do this in a way that our wise folks here know about building have recommended, which is to let's go ahead and engage a contractor. We have engaged an owner's representative. His name's Dan Barzell, who's worked for some nonprofits. He used to actually manage all of AutoZone's properties, working with Carissa at the Metal Museum, in fact, now. Dan is going to be our representative to the contractor and to the architects. Those three folks were saying, we need a project that gets us in real time to the numbers that we can raise. Not hypothetical the world is changing, the market is changing, we still trust that it's time to go forward in a responsible way. So that's our approach that will actually be actively working on design and construction costs in the current climate so that we arrive at the goal that we need to arrive at. So we have some time for questions. Would love for you to ask them. Yes? Vandersall? Yeah. I've tried 6 times. I can't. Oh, they're there. Maybe I'm stupid.
Oh, you're not stupid.
Can you give them the mic so we can hear?
It's Vandersall Collective, and I bet after this we can make emails and those connections available.
And you're always welcome to email us. I also want to note, Robin will be sending out a much more detailed summary of our report. You'll be receiving that, I believe, Monday? This week, maybe Tuesday. But and on that report, it actually has our web address and all that contact info. So you'll be able to find us very quickly, and we're always available for questions.
Can you talk about a timeline at all? Like we're ready to go, but like are we starting tomorrow? Or and with that, when do we see? I know you're talking about adjusting plans. When do we think we might see those plans?
Scott, you go ahead.
Yeah, we are meeting tomorrow morning with our owner's rep to get some things in line, and already some concepts we're coming back to simplify, reach our goals. So I don't have a date for you, but on it, I would say in a matter of a month. I don't know. I don't want to overpromise, but in the next, I think 60 days, we would for sure have some good renderings that then you can see in 3 dimensions. For good reason, they didn't want us to even put the concepts out there earlier because we're already rebooting from those initial ones. But we're excited about the direction that they're taking. And but further schedule, I think Shannon wants to know too.
Sure. So what you can anticipate from a time of solicitation is that it really takes place in about 4 parts. And so we would be willing to hit the ground running just as soon as your vestry is, to spend about 2 to 3 months in preparation. We would work to create the infrastructure. I will be very clear and say a capital campaign needs to have a separate account. There's separate accounting measures that need to go into place. We want to make sure that we work with your administrative staff to have best practices so that we keep your auditors happy. We'll also spend that time recruiting, creating gorgeous case materials. Now's the time for gorgeous case materials. And really making sure also that we are working with your annual giving efforts as well as your planned giving or your legacy giving efforts so that we are a cohesive team, not something that's butting heads up against each other, right? Then from there, we would move into, in the nonprofit world, we would call it a silent phase. We call it an advanced gift phase, where we would look to the feasibility study confidential results to help guide us a bit as to who we could have some quiet, very confidential conversations for some lead gifts. Then, over the course of 6 to 8 weeks, we would engage some volunteers in having those conversations. At that point, probably at this point around November, we would be looking to have a kickoff, capital campaign kickoff. That would be a wonderful event where we will announce how much has been raised. We will invite the entire community to this work because all gifts of all sizes will be necessary for this to be successful and always successful. Everyone's is important to this work. And so that period of time would last about 2 months. And then finally, we would have the cleanup phase. The cleanup phase is where essentially we make sure that we're confirming all details of gifts. We're making sure that people have their tax acknowledgement letters. We're making sure that everyone that gives knows how grateful we are for their thoughtful generosity. And we're making plans for attrition. We're making plans for strategies that go well beyond the capital campaign to address any unexpected drops in giving. So that's the arc of a campaign.
Okay, would you explain why the organ needs to, and also how far apart the seats are going to be?
Dr. Lynch? Someone get that woman a microphone. She has studied up on this and traveled to...
No. Wait.
I'm ready for that question. I took an exploratory tour of sister instruments that were built in 1935 and 1936 within 6 to 9 months of ours. So if you do the math, I believe that is about 87 years. So I just wonder if any of you have an 87-year-old appliance or automobile that hasn't needed work from time to time. The most significant project was done in 2003 because there were termites in the north chamber. And so that was a considerable hundreds of thousands of dollars in repairs and stabilization. Also cleaning up the chamber from significant damage. I'm so excited, my voice is wavering. Because this is important to know. The other thing that had to be replaced in 2009 was the console, the keyboards. That physical piece was also malfunctioning. And so without that, I can't play anything. It's time to address pipe work that has not been addressed for 87 years. And there's an aesthetic piece about it that I will not go into because I know we are limited on time. But Robin has so graciously given me space in the next coming chronicle where I will be able to describe this a lot more in detail. If you think of the Mona Lisa with hot pink lipstick on, that's sort of what we're talking about. So that's a little teaser for why you should read the Chronicle article coming up. Thank you so much, Dana Sue.
And Dana Sue also asked about the pew widths.
Oh, yeah. So I'm not the biggest guy, but I feel your pain, even though I don't have to kneel out there. When Terry Eason, who was our consultant with regard to worship space, came over, as soon as he walked into the church, Charles Shipp, he said, "Give me your tape. Do you have a tape measure? I've never seen pews this tiny." And he measured from front to back. So his recommendation is to maintain the look and the beauty and the historic nature of our pews. We could use the end caps, possibly have seats that are made for humans in between them, and if we missed if we lost the center divider, we could gain a seat on every pew, which would help us move them out to, say, 36 inches on center, which we're going to have fewer pews in the church, but gain one bottom on each pew. Maybe two if you got people who are really squishing together. So those dividers kind of make them just work less efficiently. So that's a strategy, but definitely at least 36 inches, one pew, from the back of one pew to the next, which is some industry standards so that you can actually say your prayers and not do a Pilates exercise while you're... What's that? They're like 32 to 33. Is that right? Charles, does that sound right? So maybe four or five more inches should make a big big difference. What other questions do you have? It's not your last chance. Kathy.
I wanted to ask about the parking that
Yeah.
y'all mentioned,
Yeah.
which is a great concern to me and to everybody. And I just wondered if your ideas for how you're going to, I don't know, pull spaces from the sky, I'm not sure. If y'all have made those decisions or just what they are specifically or when we would know.
Yeah, so Kathy asked about the parking. Yes, great question. So two things. One of the things that came up early on, I think Harriet said this one time. She's like, is there any way we could begin to return the front of the church to the front of the church? So that seems like an impossible question. Well, the first answer, too, is that we haven't designed the parking lot yet. They're just some conceptual ideas. We know we want more green space. We know we want space dedicated for the historical marker that memorializes that, makes contemplative space. We want space that works during the week. I was on the RFP committee with the Downtown Memphis Commission to receive proposals for 100 North Main. The entity that purchased that building for the city was actually the parking authority, because that has to satisfy some of the essential parking needs of this area of downtown for it to matter to the city. So it's interesting to think about that possibility. Probably Sunday morning is not when that's going to be at full capacity. So if we can actually design with that in mind, and we actually had a plan to talk to Billy Orgel before this got started, but I couldn't talk to him because I was on the group of people who are recommending things. So Billy and Kevin Woods are the folks who are going to develop that property. So conversation with the city, we can fold that wisdom into our design and say, listen, city, we can make some different priorities on our block with regard to green space and how many spaces we need for accessibility and weekdays and Sundays as well, and have some elbow room to actually have a great resource right across the street that allows more people to, not everybody, but more people to actually access through kind of our front door instead of bringing everybody in through the garage like we tend to do. Does that make sense? It's still in process. These are just still kind of priorities that we have, and we know that we have to have a good parking plan for the folks who need to get here. It needs to be accessible and welcoming, and we want our whole block to be that. What else?
Just one.
Yeah.
Have you all thought about a theme?
Happy days are here. Oh, not that kind of theme. Not that kind. We don't have a theme. I don't know where that comes on the. That's out of my above my pay grade. Where does the theme happen?
We have a lot of ideas, but we don't have a theme that has been finalized. We'll wait until the vestry says yes to moving forward, first of all, and then we go back to the report that we did and all that we've heard through, especially the interview process, and that's where we'll come up with a theme that will connect with the future here. So that's the beginning part of the preparatory part that Erin talked about and putting together the materials. That's where we'll work with that. Yeah.
I commend you for all the work that has been done. It's amazing to think of all the people who care about this place, who are in this room now, and they're just surround us in the legacy of people who have come before us. I guess my question is there a process, part of the process, to include current staff members and possibly former staff members in what they need and how that's implemented into the plan? Thank you.
Yes. So staff members were early in the process consulted as a group and as individuals to start setting goals. We'll get more granular from this point, right? So now that we have a sense of what our scope can be, we had the blocks that were essential to us that we thought could really help especially these three buildings work together in more graceful ways. But now's the time, and I've been telling staff about every week, next step will be how many people, how many kids can fit in that room? How does the kitchen need to be laid out exactly for Waffle Shop and for Wednesday nights and for Sundays? So some of those more specific things, now that we have a scope and that we'll refine the plans, that's when so staff will be absolutely involved, as will leaders that are not staff, that are running Waffle Shop or doing outreach ministries, or we have a staff person who's leading that, but we have other people who would be involved. How do the flow of things through these buildings work? Who are the key people that we need to get? The choir folks, how do they get involved? All the way down the list. Yeah, thanks, Leslie.
This is a real brief question. Do you do branding? I looked at your website and I couldn't figure it out whether you did or didn't.
Yes, we do branding. And we'll, if we're hired to move forward on this particular campaign, we would work on creating a design system for the campaign itself.
Other questions? We'll have lots more opportunities, but don't. Anybody who has anything else? I'm thrilled with this process, and I didn't know I'd say that. I'm thrilled for all the reasons that I think you would be, that there are these measures of health and vibrancy and trust and all of the things that actually matter more. Like the money doesn't matter if we don't have these things, if we're not an actual Christian community that knows who we are, trusts one another, has room to be creative and imagine what we might be to this city, and that's faithful to who we are and expands that even. So I'm grateful to everyone who's participated in any way, grateful for y'all for being here in the room, grateful for folks on live stream, something else we didn't know how to do a couple of years ago when we started this process. We do have just, if she passes the background checks, our on-site person has agreed to be, is Margaret McLean. So she's going to be our details person behind the scenes, helping us make this forward. Anything else from y'all?
Could I say one thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So also we want to say thank you to Scott, because Scott has a wonderful way of leading faithfully throughout the pandemic, and has certainly been a wonderful partner for Mieke and I to work with, along with Katie and David and Margaret Craddock and Robin and so many others that have led this process through. So thank you to all of you for your hard work. I think if Mieke and I have anything else that we want to say, it's that we know that people don't raise money simply for the sake of giving money. We know that there is something that is deeply compelling behind who you are and what you do and how you belong to one another, how you care for one another. There's a reason why you show up each Sunday. And it was thrilling to read this in your results, to see those health markers, and it was thrilling to partner with you in this work. And we are so excited about what's possible in the days and years to come. So thank you.
Mieke and Erin are going to come to church with us, and they'll be for a little bit at coffee hour if you want to talk to them after. And they'll be here right now. But go in peace to love and serve the Lord.